Please take your seats for our very last session, not of today, but the whole conference. It's an honor for me to invite our last keynote speaker, Alfried Langle, to the stage. After Alfried's lecture, I'll be doing a little closing remarks kind of a talk. But until then, please, Alfried Langle.
Thank you, Jack, for introducing me. I have a theme which is a bit a load. And you see, it is about forgiving and repenting. And I want to ask you for forgiveness. To bring such a hard stuff at the end of such a beautiful Congress. And I want to take the opportunity to thank not only Amy for the whole input in all this movement, but especially to Jacques and the team for this organization, which was so perfect. Thank you. Well, the main theme is building bridges. What does this have to do with forgiving and regretting? There can be gaps between us. There can be difficulties, separations, divisions, going away from each other, gaps in relationships, in a family, in a partnership, between friends. It can happen that we feel offended, hurt, devaluated, postponed, stepped over. People were aggressive to us, bullied us. It can be in a family, it can be on a working place, in school. And we suffer. And with this suffering, it makes us victims. And many people think and come to therapy or counseling sometimes that being a victim, you cannot do anything. You are just lost, passive, passivated, and have to suffer. And then many think best way is to forget about it. Some take a whiskey or a rake. It makes it a bit easier for the moment. But such feelings have a tendency to pervade life and to have a resistance can become chronic. And then pain can become chronic. And there is a gap between me and the people or the persons who hurt me, who did bad to me. And I suffer. Forgiving is a way to build a bridge. To maybe even reconcile. But it may also happen that I offend myself, that I do something dumb, that I'm unhappy about myself, and I have the gap within me. Regretting can build a bridge. But it's not so easy as I speak it out here. It has traps. And so I want to deepen the theme and see how we can work on this to help people and to help ourselves. And when we are hurt, when we are offended, when other people injured us, then I feel personally hurt. I may feel intimidated. When maybe you remember a situation where you are really angry about somebody or something what happened to you, where you suffer, where you feel treated unjustly. And what can I do? But before we go to what we can do, we have to look at what feelings does it create? If you look at your own experience, I feel hurt, yeah. But what does this pain cause as other pains? Like when you throw a stone into the water, you have circles which expand. And so the initial circle of this pain can cause a series of feelings. Do you see any consequential feelings in after being hurt? There is a chain of feelings which can arise. We call them feelings, hurt feelings, in our third fundamental motivation, which is in our concept. It has some similarity with the seer concept of the 4 dimensions. The third dimension is this being myself. Who am I? Can I be myself? Do I have a good respect to myself, self-value? Am I in a good dialogue with myself? In this dimension, in this being myself, in this authenticity or also identification with myself, in this level, the injury is situated. And in this level, there are specific feelings which are triggered, caused by such a problem. Like being intimidated and then embarrassed and not feeling strong enough to say anything against. And I feel humbled and small and a bit like a child, regressed to the childhood. Or I may feel disgust to that person. Really, I could vomit about that, spit out. Or I can feel envy because I was treated unjustly and others got it. And then I feel jealous. When the beloved person, when my partner is so nice to another person and I see it, but to me, the partner is not so nice. She's never laughing with me, but she's laughing so beautifully to that other person. This is hurting me. And I'm jealous to that person because I have the feeling I have the right for it, but he or she gets it. Painful. You know, I'm not slapped, but it is like a spiritual pain, a pain in my heart. And the other becomes a rival. And I feel aggression, rival aggression against the other. Or out of stinginess, I can feel a greed. All are normal human feelings. And when this person, something bad happens to this person, I have a malicious joy. Right to him. He deserves it. It does good to me. It's so human. It's of course not the height of the personality, and we can always be better. But on the ground where we live and where we stand and where we move, these feelings show up. They are accompanying the situation, the fact. But when it hurts so much, it also happens that we have automatic reactions, coping reactions, defense mechanisms. It's a terrible word, it's so mechanistic, but it's very common coming from depth psychology. It is the same category of feelings, of affects, of reactions. We feel that we have to protect ourselves, and protection first before we can do anything, or because we are over demanded, we protect to overcome. And this can be that I go into distance. I don't speak with that person anymore. I don't look at that perpetrator. I push them back. Or that I try to punish that person. Punish by not speaking with the person anymore, not meeting, not answering, etc. Punishing means I want you to suffer so that you can get an empathic feeling to what you did to me, because I suffer so much. But you have no idea what you did to me. So I need to suffer, to punish you, that you suffer. That you get finally an idea how bad it was what you did to me. It's to establish a bit of justice. It's a not very sufficient or very effective way to equilibrate the situation. Many people start to justify themselves. I didn't do wrong. Why did you do that to me? Or they have a push, a need to justify, even in situations where they are not asked. They always excuse themselves for just for being alive. As a reaction, in this third dimension, as a reaction to re-establish the inner equilibrium, the inner relationship to oneself, to be oneself. Anger. Types of aggressions, anger, annoyance can come up. Aggression is important because it's a mobilization of vital force to defend, to protect myself, and to say stop. But it's not a resolution. But at least it helps me to survive. So it's good to have such coping reactions. It's important and it's human. Freezing reflexes when nothing helps. All these, the whole battery of reactions are applied. Then still remain a last form of reaction. I'm already half dead. I'm freezed, half. I can't move anymore. In aggression, I'm highly active, but then I'm already half done and splitting away the feelings, and dissociation happens. These are automatic feelings, what we have seen first, and automatic reactions, coping reactions, which happen without our decision. They happen automatically. I do not want them to do. It's even hard to stop them because I feel so pushed. This also belongs to the human being. But and we have an existential congress here, there is something which has to do with freedom. This has to do with making decisions. Making decisions is the realization of our being free. We can do something. We can make decisions. We can come to an active process to overcome by forgiving. Forgiving is something active. It doesn't happen to me. I must want it, otherwise I will not forgive. It's not a reaction. This is the difference between a reaction, which is automatic behavior, and action. Action is always a decided behavior. And so we can personally contribute something to overcome the difficulty, to overcome the injury. But first, we have to be concerned with ourselves, to gain back the inner equilibrium, that we are able to act, and that we must be in a relationship to ourselves where we are willing not to leave ourselves alone, that we are willing to care for ourselves, to maintain the relationship. Some people, especially personality disorders also, have difficulties in that. Forgiving, or this attitude of caring for oneself, helps us to come to a first aid for my wounds. Forgiving is aid for my wounds. In psychology, it's a bit, it can be for some people a bit of difficulty to speak about forgiving or even repenting, because it's highly connected to religion. Over thousands of years, it was the theme of religion to promote this human capacity to heal wounds. But what I'm bringing here has nothing to do with religion. But of course, it can be embedded in any form of religion. But we are describing here the purely psychological aspects of it. In religion, we are putting the whole process, people in religion put the whole process into a bigger understanding, into a binding towards a higher value, towards a dialogue with God, or seeing God behind. This, of course, can be prolonged in that direction, but in existential therapy, we do not go so far. We work on the basis of what can you decide, what can you practically do with this effect. Do you have an idea what forgiving means? What is the phenomenological content of forgiving? What is the essence? What is meant by forgiving? What do I do when I forgive? It's maybe not so easy to find an answer to that. But when we have a closer look, it's not so difficult. Forgiving is simply releasing the person who did harm to me from any guilt. So you are out of debt. More practically speaking, I don't have a claim anymore from you. I don't need anything. There is, and I'm not mad anymore when I've forgiven. And I have nothing against you. I do not want to revenge. And I don't fight anymore. I come to peace. How good for the soul when I have peace. I can let it be because there is no unsettled account anymore. I do not need reparation for the damage. To be able to forgive must imply the ability to not forgive. To be so free that I don't have to forgive. I still need something from you when I do not forgive. And therefore I have to fight for it. We will see that in steps, how we can work on that. But it requires that I check if I still need something from you. Don't forgive as long as you have the feeling that the other owes you something. Does forgiving mean that I now have a good relationship with you? This is also important to make this distinction. No, I can forgive and never wanting to see you again. And nevertheless, I can forgive. Forgiving is something different, which we are going to show. It is an application of my freedom to change our relationship. And it comes only from me. I don't need you for that. And it is important to make this distinction because many people have difficulties to forgive because they say, I feel clearly I never want to be again with this partner or this friend or even with my parents sometimes. And how can I forgive? Because I'm so clear I do not want relationship. It gives too much weight on forgiving if you want to combine it with having a good relationship afterwards. Split it into two parts. Forgiving is one part, it's a basis. But being together, being able to live together, this needs a step further. This further step is called reconciliation. Forgiving is not reconciliation. And forgiving is not automatically or forgiving can mean that separation is the best result afterwards. And don't have a bad conscience when you want to be separated after what happened to us. There are misunderstandings. The first is that forgiving is not the same as forgetting. Repression or denial is not forgiving. To no longer think about something, forgetting, or even more actively having repressed it and forgotten, does not mean that I have forgiven. And it is even a danger if we repress or forget that what happened to me. The sting is still in my soul. The thorn is there. The pain is there. It may be numb, but it is there. And in many situations, this thorn can be moved and then the pain is reactivated. Bad feelings remain. It is not over. It needs a working through. By the way, I spoke with Jacques and he said he will make it able that you can get the PowerPoints on the homepage, or he will make something that you don't have to make notes. Another understanding, another misunderstanding is that when people only understand, then they have forgiven. It's automatically, like the French saying, proverb is saying, comprendre, c'est tout pardonner. Understanding means forgiving all. It's not so automatic. Why? What do we existential therapists think about that? What is lacking? Understanding is still a way of perceiving, empathizing, seeing what moves the other person. But forgiving is an act. Forgiving needs a decision. Having understood alone is not enough. It needs me to become proactive and to do a step towards it. Forgiving is that I want to forgive you, that I want to change something. I may have understood, but not yet forgiven. Forgiving is a process. And the feelings have to be worked through, carried through. I cannot command forgiving. It's a mistake which was often made in religion, that in religion we could hear, you must excuse and forgive, otherwise you are not a Christian or whatever. There are special circumstances which we also have to consider when we speak about forgiving. Forgiving can be facilitated when we see that the other person acted unintentionally. When we have this understanding, this, of course, when we see or when the other explains it or when we know it, then it is easier to forgive than when the other did it purposefully. And the other shouted to me because the other wanted to devaluate me in front of the team, that I don't get this job which I want, for instance. This is, of course, pure aggression. And then it is much more difficult to forgive such an action than when the other lost himself and I see it happened to him and he didn't want it. He was too stressed in that situation, etc. Or when the other develops an understanding for me, then it is facilitating forgiving. Or if they repaired something, if they gave something back to me, or if they have insight, or even excuse themselves. And it becomes more complicated when the other has no insight. When when the other is closed, when there is a danger of repetition. In such situations, it's maybe not even good to forgive. But ultimately, it is important to know and to see that the act of forgiving is on my side. It is free and does not depend on the behavior from the other. The other can help me and make it easier, but ultimately, it's only my personal gesture. There are some questions. Does forgiving mean to absolve the other's guilt? No. Forgiving means simply, I do not expect anything from you. There is no unsettled account. And this does not mean that there is no guilt. Sometimes people think I cannot forgive because the other may mean that he or she is not guilty anymore because I have forgiven, all is over. No. But I do not want anything from you anymore. it's not always good to forgive. There are, so to say, unforgivable situations. Abuse, violations. Sometimes it is when the perpetrator, when we think or ponder about what happened, and when we think about the perpetrator, that this may hurt and traumatize. And so, as long as it traumatizes, it's maybe not possible to forgive. If it is possible, but maybe sometimes not so easy. We will see a bit more. And sometimes people want to feel the other bad, let's say, suffer, to give them a thorn. For instance, a woman who has been violated said, I owe it to myself not to forgive. I want to maintain a right for atonement after my sexual violation. I have compassion for him, what a poor guy he is, but I cannot set him free. This is also a clear and good position, and she feels good about that, to maintain her position and her dignity, and somehow she remains in relationship to her perpetrator because she wants him to not set him free from his guilt. But there remains, of course, a restlessness in herself. Forgiving hardly happens, as I said, with trauma, rape, but when the experience is overcome, then forgiving is rather possible. It may still hurt, but it's not, this is, in human beings, nothing is a mechanical, absolute. It is always in a constant exchange and dynamics. Or when the defiance is dominating, when there is a revenge, then it is still, it cannot be done. There is still a need to be fulfilled. Or when there is an inability to accept, to let it be real, what happened. Then people, without acceptance of what happened, forgiving is not possible. But as a result, we must see and know as therapists and counselors that having not forgiven produces a tension which remains. One is not whole, healed, healed, as long as one has not forgiven. Something remains open. But sometimes it is necessary for having a process that something remains open. So, in existential therapy and counseling, we have the attitude of phenomenology. We do not expect something. We want to have a process with people. And when we enter the process of forgiving or to work through these offenses and hurts and pains, we do not know what will come out. So let us have now a look on the steps for forgiving, for practical work. And by the way, these are also the steps underlying to regretting. Regretting is the same, not towards another person, but towards myself. It has a bit more, some specificities, but in principle, it's the same process. First, we have to state the damage. What happened? And to assess it. And to see the consequences. And to evaluate the damage and to come to a judging recognition of the unjust. We look at the concrete effects of the damage. This produces an inner ground when we deal with the fact. These are the givens, and we put our feet on the givens. For instance, what has the father really done? What have been the consequences? Was it that because of his devaluation, that I wasn't eager enough to go to the university and I missed the chance to become a psychologist because I felt so diminished? What were the consequences? What is understandable and what is not understandable to deal with the facts? What was the intention? What do I think of it? And by looking at that, it is also important to have a look at what is my own guilt, what is my contribution to that what happened. Sometimes it's not only the other who has the guilt, who did the bad thing. Sometimes I contributed, and it's all sometimes not easy to accept it and to see that. Then we look to the feelings, to the emotions, we relate to the wind. To have to come to feelings, it is important to relate, to come close. Then feelings come up. And when we have feelings in that what happened, this brings more life into the injury. And more life means, like when we have a wound, then the wound is surrounded by red skin. This means there is more life because the body is working to heal the wound. And in the psyche, it is the same. We need to turn towards it and to take up the feelings that we can, and this brings the healing power into the cold, deadly experience. And to feel the wrath and the anger and possibly also the grief, if grief is there. So for instance, I ask myself, what did it do to me? How did I experience it? What does it still trigger in me when I think about it today? Without grasping the feelings, forgiving will never be complete. It cannot be done only solely cognitively. It needs this, the affect, the being touched. I have to know how my life feels like under these circumstances. What it really means to my life. The feelings are telling me that. And the feeling is more than just the pain. It is contained with the circles of other feelings surrounding them, like devaluated, feeling like a little child, feeling pushed back, feeling not being loved, etc., etc. I have to be touched inwardly, but this needs time. So forgiving is a process which cannot be done quickly like this. Then we come to a next step. This is maybe a bit more complicated. To return, to go back to what is really my own. That what matters to me, when I look at my self-esteem, at my value I have for myself, how is this damaged and what do I need there? I have justified claims to the other for compensation, for an excuse. Claims which I have a right for because I feel them to be just. I need justice. Without justice, our soul is suffering. I need, for it, at least, for instance, that the father makes an apology. And it is important to formulate it concretely. This leads to a better grasping of what is lacking. It becomes negotiable when it is graspable. And it can be corrected. For instance, that I need money for therapy, or that I need a substitute, a replacement of what has been broken when it was a material thing which has been taken away, broken, stolen, or whatever. Remorse or apology from the other is almost always needed. Often patients do not know exactly what they need, what they want. And often they do not dare to say it, to express it, to come to the father and to say this. And then it comes to a stagnation. Nothing happens. It remains so for months, years, until father is dying. Then maybe there's the last chance. Can you say something about this? And sometimes it's too late. There is not only the justified claims. Justified means I feel and see that this is needed for to come to an equilibrium, to a right. But there are also needs which are there. I have maybe the need, and it is important to find out which needs do I have, maybe a need to more distance. I'm still living in the family or in the partnership or so. But I feel the need, and it is important to take it up. And out of this distance, I can protect me more. Or I have a need to pay back, to revenge, for vendetta. It can be very strong need, and don't step over it. It is so human. It tells us something. We have only to understand it. This is the difficulty. For this, sometimes we need counseling, coaching. And we see what we have a need for, and we see what is possible or not. Maybe father is already dead. I have a need to revenge, but what can I do when he's dead? And then to realize that this is too late. This is over. It is not possible to get it. And to come to a distance to it when it is no longer possible. But for that, what is possible, I have to stand up. I should stand up for my own sake. And then finally we decide in this fighting for the own, in this looking for what is really me, and I have to protect and I'm responsible for that. To deal further and to make plans and to see what I want from the other, but also to renounce. Renouncing is an action out of our freedom. Renouncing of that what is not possible, or what I think I don't need it anymore. In renouncement is the attitude where I say, this would be good, I would love to have it, but I feel I can be without it. I can be myself, I can lead my life in a good way if I don't get it back or don't have it. And now a salient point in the renouncement is, if it is real renouncing, the salient point is, and I gain more by it. And what do I gain more by renouncing for things which I do not get in the process of forgiving? I gain my freedom back. I gain my independence. And this helps me when I deal with that what I need and what is just. This makes the experience which is sticking upon me, it makes it more objective. It brings it into a certain distance. And it makes it a task. And so I can come to more distance to it. Distance by making a decision of renouncement, for instance. Distance because I have found myself more and more, and so I see I am different to the victim I was before. I regained my strength, my self-esteem. I come to more distance comes up when something is given back to me, when the other pays back something or replaces what has been broken. And so I become free again. And this makes me more able to forgive. Meaningful dealing with the open demands is the last step. So the question is therefore, what is appropriate? What helps? Or what is too much? What stands for that I fight for it? What can I still do? Does it make sense? How long to fight for it? And should my forgiveness be communicated to the other person or not? Or can I just keep it for myself? I can communicate it to the other person, but I don't have to. Because forgiving is an interpersonal act. It is independent from what the other does. It is my own freedom which I am realizing. To a survey, what is the concrete damage? How do I actually feel about it? Just to have it in a nutshell. What do I demand or need concretely? This is a really important point where clients, patients sometimes escape because of many reasons. It would be an own lecture. And what would be reasonable? Meaningful. When people are not able to forgive, in my experience, it happens mostly because either they do not know or they do not tell what they need. They do not know, they do not deal enough with what is needed, or they do not tell it to the others. Some reflections: forgiving does not mean having no pain. It can still be painful and hurt, Sometimes people think they cannot forgive because it is still painful. No, we can forgive even when it is still hurting. And at times it hurts less once I have forgiven. Forgiving contains two parts. One is what is doable. These steps are runways. They are cognitive bases and lead to emotional processes. But we must leave open the outcome. We do not know what we get to see when we enter these runways. And important is also that I'm not guilty if I have not forgiven or if I cannot forgive, because we cannot command it. We cannot decide it. I'm not guilty if I cannot forgive, if my feelings, my emotions don't come up to that level. But I'm guilty if I don't try it. I'm guilty if I do not do the effort to do that. Because I leave myself behind. I leave myself out. The psychological activity in this forgiving process is to remove the gaze and the expectations from the other towards myself. What I can do. This gives me back freedom. I do not expect any longer that the other starts doing something. I do not wait. In conflicting parties, this is often a mutual waiting for the other, and nothing happens. It leads to stagnation. This is maybe we can call that an existential turn, to bring myself into the center of the problem and to see what I can contribute, I can do, what I can change. And what my presentation should make us aware that I can decide something here, and that this forgiving depends only on me. I am responsible for that. When, for instance, a patient is suffering from not having been loved by the mother, and there is lots of pain. Of course, this is a longer process, but the structure in it is to describe this deficit of love and let go the own expectations. This is a process. It's said very briefly, but it needs time. And to work first on acceptance. And acceptance that I have to accept my mother. Maybe she loved me, but my feeling is I didn't get that love, what I needed, what I would have, what I would love to have. And acceptance is a clear act. It is an existential step. It's not a resignation. It's a doing. Acceptance means, okay, my mother was not able or had problems or whatever, a cold personality, whatever. It is so. And I can let it be that I have such a mother. But how is this possible? What does it need to accept? It needs that I have the inner feeling, the inner ground, that I can still be with it. It does not destroy me. I can keep it, bear it, endure it. Otherwise, I cannot accept. Only when I'm strong enough to be with this fact, I can accept. And therapeutic work has a lot to do with coming to this acceptance, to prepare people that they realize it's still alive. I can give relationship, warmth, love to myself, and I had other people who gave it to me. Can I live with that I have such a mother, and let her go as a mother? This needs strength, of course, and therefore that such a process, it often needs a year or even more to come to that point. The consequence of not forgiving is, of course, that there is still pain, it's stress, it is restlessness, it makes life bitter. And when people have a lot of things which they have not forgiven, it may lead even to the bitterness syndrome, with symptoms like persistent bad mood, somatoform impairments, loss of drive, suicidal withdrawal and suicidal thoughts. So social withdrawal and suicidal thoughts. What I need about 10 minutes. What about when I hurt myself? When I do things which are not good. Not two people anymore now, it's me and me. I'm both offender and victim. When I was seduced to buy another pair of shoes, and I come home and I ask myself, where shall I put them? I have no place. When I spend too much money, when I shout to another person, the person cries, I see tears coming up. When I was aggressive, when I offended the person, when I lied, when I was not faithful, and I feel, this is bad. When I did something driven by fear, out of the pressure of the social environment, when I took over a work because I couldn't say no, and now I have to do it, and I don't like it. Why was I so silly not to resist and to say, no, I don't like it? And it happened so easily. And then we suffer. And I did something bad to myself. What gets lost when I do things which are not mine? You know it. I get lost. I become strange to myself. Unwillingness comes up, disappointment, inner frictioning. I'm extending myself, discord, inner waste of energy, loss of time, and I'm not myself. Feelings of emptiness come. I cannot stand behind what I do. I feel, and it is meaningless. It's not a good feeling. And when it becomes stronger, I may even feel lost in my life. Alienation. I cannot appreciate myself. Self-value is damaged. And this brings up pain. And when I attempt to summon empathy for myself, when I turn towards my feelings in such situations, I feel sorrow. It's a pity. This is a germinal layer for the attitude of regret. Regret is a personal act. It is also nothing what happens automatically. It is an assessment. I say to myself, this is not good what I did. I would rather have not done this. But it can be delicate when I feel it as a weakness, and then shame can come up. It is important to have regret for oneself, to contour myself of my ego, so that I can feel and see who I really am. And for the community, to tell them, I see I did something bad, I was aggressive, I regret it, I'm sorry, it's even painful for me that I am different. Originally, ultimately, I am different to how I behaved in this situation. I want you to know that. And then we can communicate again. We can encounter. And I can keep the respect for myself. Steps for regret. First, similar to forgiving, we look at the facts. The damage, where I have to say it's too bad. What a pity. And the feeling of damage is important, and having the insight and to admit it to myself. This was not right. This was not good. This does not correspond to me. Regretting means too bad. And there is an impulse coming up with these feelings. I would rather have acted differently. Bah. I feel sorry. Sorrow. This sorrow is the approach phase for regretting. And when I feel it as my weakness again, then shame comes up, and this makes it more difficult to regret. It's harder. Second, the act of remorse or regret is based on an inner dialogue about one's own action. On the basis of the felt pain, where I feel I'm so sorry, is the sensing for the right thing, which this comes up now. In sorrow, I say this was bad. I'm in regretting, I feel the essential. I feel myself. I see what is the right. I feel what I did in the light of the right thing. And this produces, of course, tension, because I see the difference between what I did and what would have been better to do. And this tension is moving us to position ourselves. I don't want to do this again. I want to change that. Through this willingness to act, to change myself, and to prevent such situations, that it doesn't happen again, the tension of my remorse becomes motivation. It is the motivational power, because I see what I have done and what would be better. And then I feel attracted to it. I want to do it better. I'm not an enemy towards myself. A double dialogue starts here. And this is important. Now we come into the level of being able to encounter again. You encounter ourselves and other people. On this motivation basis, we can speak to ourselves and say, I don't take the easy way out. I don't just ignore it. I bear the cost. I load it with the feeling of pain and develop clear consequences for the future. And the outwards to the other, I can tell them, actually, I'm not the way I acted here. I'm different. I'm about that. And I want you to know it, because then it is easier for you that you can forgive me when you know and see that I have an insight. Forgiving finally has, regretting has to come to the final act to forgive myself. And this, in the intention to make up for it what is possible and to do better next time, I can come to an inner reconciliation. More I can't do. Otherwise, one remains always in the past. Regretting is an act of self-finding. And it opens me up again for the other. Kierkegaard once said, in remorse, I choose myself. It's a reconstruction of the ego in the line of one's own person. And the forgiving oneself contains the will to free oneself for doing it better next time. So, to conclude, my last summary again, a survey. Again, perception of what is not right. What was the mistake? What were the consequences? The feelings, stepping into relationship to myself in that case. And feelings give weight to what I do. And it makes it internalized. Then positioning to the necessary changes. Because I have a reason now. And to bring me into dialogue with myself and with other people. What I wanted to tell you is primarily that we have freedom, that we can find back to ourselves when we are lost by impacts from the outside, by our own actions. We can regain our trust, our truthful, proper own, our authentic ego, and go on as persons who we really are, and encounter others on this level. This is my freedom, and all this is speaking about freedom, inner freedom acted out with others and oneself. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will, I would like to, okay. Do you guys have any questions or any comments? Oh my God, let's start with first. Okay.
So, Alfred, I'm at the end of this presentation, you got to a problem that I've been struggling with, which is the question of why it's so hard for people to apologize, which is the other side. But you were speaking about apology in terms of regret, your own personal regret. What struck me about your presentation is that the other is missing. This is a process where is it true that you're feeling like this is what we have to do when the other isn't really there and open to a conversation? Because all these things are things we have to work out in the relationship. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about that. But I think the apology part that you got to is really important for people. That seems like the hardest thing.
You're fully right. I would like to make another presentation about apology. because this is based on self-value, self-esteem, and when why do I have a difficulty to apologize, to say sorry? Who am I then? Does the other person still respect me, love me when I admit that I was not perfect, that I was not the best, that all these questions of self-worth and identity and ego formation and inner dialogue and be in a relationship, a huge theme. I just cut out this section for the presentation today, and I already was too long with that. But with the apology, it would be even much longer. Thank you. But you are totally right. Yeah, why? It's also a good conclusion of this presentation to ask ourselves, how easily can I apologize? And what is my problem? When I was 20, I had a hard time to apologize. Now, with over 70, I had so often to do that I'm used to it.
What happens if you apologize and the other person does not accept that? So that's one. And the second one is, what happens if you just bypass the other people and just ask forgiveness from God?
And when I bypass the other people and, sorry?
The second one
Yeah.
is just bypass asking people forgiveness and just ask it from God. Like most religious people do. They do the sins and then they go to God instead of trying to do something to correct the actual action that they've done.
Yeah. In both cases, I would say, I leave it over to the other. If the other person doesn't accept my apology, the other person is free. And I do not have to get the reaction or answer which I like. It would be nice, but sometimes things are not nice in life. I also know now when I'm 70. And the other person, when people bypass and say the apology is in God or so, wonderful. When they are in disbelief, for them, for me, maybe not, but it's again their decision and their life. Yeah. I respect it. Maybe if there is a possibility, I say something that I would like to talk about it because I have a bit a different perspective or idea or so. Maybe the other person is willing to do so, and if not, I let him go with God.